The martial arts journey is one like no other. It is a deep dive into culture and history as well as into personal perfection and an examination into where personal limitations are. It is a journey that frustrates but always rewards. It is the adventure that tests your will, your courage, and your persistence constantly. Each journey is personal and individual, yet it can be shared with a handful, a roomful, or even a world full of like-minded people doing this thing we love. This is the Martial Arts Lifestyle Podcast, a show that takes the listener along on individual martial arts journeys. Join us and listen to the stories of the people who are living a martial arts lifestyle and learn what intrigued them into starting their practice and what keeps them pursuing this endeavor. You are listening to the abbreviated version. For those of you checking this out on YouTube, please hit the like and subscribe buttons. Full-length versions of this podcast can be subscribed to at our Patreon page. It's www.patreon.com/malmag. Or individual full-length episodes can be purchased at our Gumroad page at malmag.gumroad.com. Before we begin this week's program, I would like to remind you to check out martialartslifestylemagazine.com to see articles on the martial arts. Click on the store tab to find products for the practice of Southeast Asian martial arts, featuring Timmy B's brand sticks. Check out the courses tab, currently featuring a course on the Dos Manos method of the Filipino Martial Arts. Also check out our Places to Train page, featuring top quality martial art academies from around the world. And of course, check out our events page for seminars and events coming up around the world. To see your school listed in our Places to Train page or your event on our events calendar, contact us at malmagonline@gmail.com. Welcome to Season 4 of the Martial Arts Lifestyle Podcast. Before we get to the show, I would like to thank our subscribers on Patreon, our followers on YouTube, our fans who listen on other podcast formats, and our amazing guests for helping this show succeed. We are over 160 shows strong now. Thanks to all of you. This week I get on Zoom and I talk with Southern California Kenpo legend Jesus Flores. We talk about how he got into martial arts, learning Kenpo from the Tracys, studying with Grandmaster Ed Parker, opening a school with his brother, studying the Filipino Martial Arts with Dan Inosanto, surviving a heart attack, and much more. Sit back and enjoy. Welcome to the Martial Arts Lifestyle Podcast, and welcome to Season 4. This is the Season 4 premiere, and I've picked a very amazing guest who I've been talking to for a while about coming on here, and this is just going to be a great conversation with a gentleman that I've known for over 20 years, actually, at this point. And this guy is a big part of history and martial arts in Southern California and martial arts in America, and I just can't wait to kind of dive into this. So, Sifu Jesus Flores, welcome to the show. Thank you for coming on here, and thank you for taking some time with me.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me, and so it's more than a pleasure, So
absolutely. So, wow, where to start? Well, I guess we'll start where we start everywhere. How did you get interested in training martial arts?
Back in the early days, I always had a fascination of watching Bruce Lee. I think back in those days, there was that show, The Green Hornet, and just to see him kick and punch and that kind of thing, that was just, I always found it fascinating. So we started kind of taking an interest. I think I was around 16, 17 years old at that time. But unfortunately, there really weren't any schools in Oxnard. There was this guy that we started a little bit, but by the second day, he claimed he was a brown belt. This was in the boys club. He already had a sparring by the second day, so we're doing some knife techniques by the third day. We didn't know what we were doing, So anyway, when he had us do sparring, I one of his friends told him, he says, I think you're wasting your time with these guys. I overheard him telling him that. And but the thing was this was just the second class, third class, what would you expect? So anyway, the guy said, something, why don't you guys continue practicing? We never saw him from that point on, he just.
Wow.
So at that time, there was only a martial arts school, a Tracy's karate studios in Ventura. And that was the only full-time school that was open.
Oh, wow. That's a
So
pretty
they,
big name too. Were they Kenpo as well, or were they something else? I
yeah, they
forget.
were actually students of Mr. Parker.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they were kind of, but they kind of taught the old Kenpo because they learned the Kenpo back in the late 50s, early 60s under Mr. Parker.
Wow.
Yeah, so this where we started learning there. That was the only school in the whole county, and you know, we just went up the ranks. You know, I always used to. I was always being told that, you know, 1 out of 1,000 people, you know, is going to make it to black belt. So to some degree, they were telling us, you know, something, most likely you're going to be a statistic, you know. So anyway, and there was a change of ownerships, you know, throughout this period of time. They decided to move to Oxnard, which this is where we lived, and we moved in back in around 73. And then we became instructors, and, you know, then this how we kind of stay with it, you know, so.
Wow. Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, like I was just kind of saying before we start out. So I was born in 1969, actually in Simi Valley.
Oh, is
And
that
so
right?
I don't remember it, but you know, my parents tell me about how it was just a little community of maybe 30,000 people at that time, mostly in Orange Grove. So yeah, I'm thinking there probably just wasn't a big population of people in that area at the time, was there?
Yeah, no, there wasn't. You know, the city was small, like Oxnard too, and over the years it's grown. But also the interest of the martial arts too was, you know, for the longest time we were the only school actually in Oxnard. You know, and I think to
Yeah.
some degree, you know, we kind of gave everybody hope that, hey, you know, you can stay open, because unfortunately a lot of these schools, you know, they open, they close, they open, they close. So, you know, now we have more schools that have been open for quite some time. But yeah, back in those days, you know, we were kind of just the only ones, you know. So we
Wow.
started with the Tracy System then in around 1979. We got introduced to Mr. Parker in 75 in Redding, California. And actually, we tested with him as brown belts. But we did the techniques in the Tracy System, you know, so.
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty neat. I mean, I don't think people now realize, you know, because martial arts have really permeated pop culture now. Like it's in everything, it's everywhere. You probably ask a pretty young kid right now, they know what it is. Where I think when, you know, we were younger, it was basically there was some TV shows like you saw it on Green Hornet. I
Yes,
saw it first on Kung Fu with David Carradine.
yes.
And then like martial art movies were kind of like those were adult things. It was kind of, you might see parts of them as a kid, but generally I think a lot of adults didn't let you watch them.
Right.
And they were still, you know, specialty. It's not like it was. I remember the first movie I ever saw in the movie theater. It took me a long time because I had memories of it. And it took me till I was in college, and I stumbled across it accidentally on videotape. It was actually the very first Billy Jack film, which was called Born Losers. So the
All
second
right.
one was called Billy Jack, but the first
Yeah.
one that had the Billy Jack character was Born Losers. I saw that in the theater with my parents, and I mean, I just remember glimpses of it.
Yes.
So, you know, and Bruce Lee, I don't think I knew who he was, but I didn't see him for a while as far as movies were concerned, probably till at least, you know, I was sixth grade, so getting into double digit age,
Yeah.
and you know, comic books, and that was kind of it, you know. So it was sort of an exotic, rare thing.
Yeah, that was, you know. And I just remember even then, you know, when we started training with Mr. Parker and we kind of got to know him, you know, he was telling us, he says that he, back in 1964, he had his first international karate tournament. And this is when he brought in Bruce Lee. And I think he went right ahead and he spoke with Guru Dan. And he says, look, there's this young man coming from up north. I want you to show him around, you know, show him around town. He's going to be demonstrating. And this was his first international tournament. And he told him, he says, look, you know, he's a little cocky, okay? But you know something, he can back it up, okay? So anyway, this how Guru got to meet, you know, Bruce Lee, and, you know, and this how he started training with him, you know. So I thought that was kind of interesting, you know, just for him to say that.
Right.
You know, so.
Now that 64, that was literally the first one, right? The first one.
Yeah, that was the first. Yeah, this was the first time where actually what Mr. Parker did, he brought in people because back in those days, everything was pretty much close events like Taekwondo. If they had anything, it was just basically just within their own system. So this was the very first tournament where he actually brought in people from the Japanese systems, the Korean systems, the Chinese systems, and this was the first time where they actually competed against each other. The only problem back then was that there was no equipment. Okay, so basically everything was just barehanded.
Right.
There was this lady that flew in from Hawaii, to fight in the tournament. And, Mr. Parker thought he had everything covered. And he approaches Mr. Parker and he says, Mr. Parker, I flew all the way from Hawaii to participate, but I noticed that you don't have a women's division, okay? And then Mr. Parker says, whoops, because he didn't think no women were going to participate. So that particular year, this lady, she ended up participating with the men in the sparring, okay? So basically this what, so every year he thought he had everything covered, but there was something new that always came up, but at that year, actually, Hawaii dominated the tournament because a lot of people, since Mr. Parker was on for Hawaii, everybody, they wanted to give support to Mr. Parker. So basically, most of the divisions were one people from Hawaii, like Mike Stone and
right. Right. Wow. There needs to be a documentary film made about that. That is like one of the most incredible sounding events. The more and more I learn about it, we know the highlights. We know that there were, these famous names that we all know. We know that Bruce Lee did a demo, and that's kind of what we know. But it was so much more.
Yes, even Ben Largusa.
Yeah.
He first introduced Filipino, and Guru has mentioned it, that he introduced Filipino martial arts to the karate world, which was done for the very first time, so
exactly.
So that was what was interesting, so.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I have this great interest in Kenpo because it's like I know a bit about it academically, having read about it. I grew up in Illinois, so I read magazines and books a lot when I was a kid on martial arts because I came a big junkie and I would just read and read and read. But we didn't really have any Kenpo schools. Like in the Midwest, most of the martial arts came from either guys that were military or like their students who had maybe grown up and taken over schools. So it was primarily guys that were doing systems that were guys from the Midwest who had gone into military. So it was probably like Okinawan stuff because a lot of them were Marine Corps, or Taekwondo because they had gone to Korea or Tang Sudo. So Kenpo was kind of one of those things that was always very exotic to me. And I never realized how big it is until I kind of got here and started meeting Kenpo people and going, wow, this is actually a really big thing. There's a lot of people who practice it. It's a huge organization. And I understand now why I see it so much here because Ed Parker was based out of here.
Yes. But something, I think one of the things, I think how probably Chile probably has, if not as much, probably even a little bit more than probably Kenpo people that study Kenpo. Because at one point, actually Kenpo was the only system, I think during the Pinochet era, the person that took Kenpo into Chile was Arturo Petit. And he became one of Mr. Parker's first international students. So basically, at that time period, he was studying Kenpo. He got his black belt with Mr. Parker, but the president was also studying under Pinochet, under Arturo Petit. So the only martial art he allowed to be taught in Chile was actually Kenpo during that era. Okay.
Wow.
So that was kind of interesting. But one of the things that I think is worth to say is that because I asked Mr. Parker that when I learned the Tracy system, the system really had no checks. So, you did a punch to the stomach, you chamber your other hand, you get a pound strike to the face, you chamber your other hand. So, and that was one of the things that I asked Mr. Parker. I said, Mr. Parker, why was it that the Tracy brothers did not have checks in the Kenpo systems since they were your students, okay? So this is what he told me, but he says, well, when they left, I knew they were going to go on their own. So I left certain things out, okay?
Oh, okay.
One of the things that he left was checks. And that could have been true, or maybe the other thing that I have a tendency to believe probably is that basically at that time period, Mr. Parker did not have the checks in the Kenpo system. And when I did ask him, well, how did you came about in developing checks in the Kenpo system? He says, well, me and my friend we went shooting, and he shot a deer, And basically, as he approached this deer, he says, it's a last dying move. The deer kicked my friend right on the throat, the deer. And basically, what he ended up doing, he ended up killing my friend right in front of me. And he says, it was not the intentional move of the deer, but it was the unintentional move of the deer that caused this to happen. Right. So if this can happen here, he says, this can happen in the street. So whether this is true or not, what it is true is that Mr. Parker did develop the checks, and he first developed the checks just with the hands, and then he developed the checks with the legs, okay? Now, one of the things that I look at is that I look at Filipino martial arts, and then I notice that they do a lot of checks too, okay? So, and Mr. Parker had friends in the Filipino community, like Ben La Rusa and all that. And so I kind of have the feeling that I asked Guru about that. He really hasn't said yes, but I think I really think, because Mr. Parker was brilliant, is that he may have picked up, I'm not saying that he did, but he may have picked up the checks a lot from the Filipino martial arts, and he started implementing those checks in the Kenpo system, okay? Right. And then, so basically he started with the hand checks, then he started with the leg checks, and he started implementing those ideas. And the other thing, which I think is interesting to say, is that back in the 60s, Mr. Parker started exploring the areas in which what are the different ways we can be attacking the street, okay? And he says, okay, we can be punched, we can be kicked, somebody can try to come in with a weapon, somebody can get you into a lock, a choke, hold, hug, hold, push, grab. So basically, once he analyzed, you can be attacked by two opponents. Once he did that, he says, well, out of those areas, which is the most simple grab in the system? And he noticed that the grabs were the most simple, because he says, as long as they're just grabbing and they're not doing anything else, then that would be okay. Then he says, so all the number one techniques on our system, in the Kenpo system, the way I teach them, they're all grabs, okay? All the number one techniques. Then he says, well, what's a little bit more dangerous than a grab? Then obviously a push, He felt that a push was nothing more than a lazy punch, okay? So he put that in category number two. And then what's a little bit more dangerous than a push? Then he felt a punch. What's a little bit more dangerous than a punch is a kick. What's a little bit more dangerous than a kick? Then obviously a hold and a hug. And then what's a little bit more dangerous than a hold and a hug? A choke and a lock. And then what's more dangerous than a choke and a lock? Then he felt weapon techniques, okay? So, and then later on in brown belt, we start getting to multiple opponents. So basically, Mr. Parker, he put the techniques in those categories: grab, push, punch, kick, holding, hug, choke and lock, and then weapon techniques, which makes it kind of even more interesting, So over the years, what I've been trying to do is analyze the system, understand it, where a lot of people have said, well, Mr. Parker meant to change the art, so I'm going to be going from this to that. And throughout the years, I kind of been able to understand his art in greater depth. Because one of the things he told me, I trained with him from 1985 to 1990. I personally took private lessons from him, where I would go to his house and he would give me an hour class. Well, I went through the system once with him, and he says, "This is what you want to do." I said, "Mr. Parker, I still want to go over the system again, because I know you're going to cover more times the second time around than the first time." And he said, "Jesus, this is very good that you say that, because unfortunately, some of my students, they just go through the whole system once and they feel that they got everything. But what they don't realize is that I only went through phase A with them. I went through phase B, phase C, phase D, so I said, no, I know you're going to go add more things to what I have already learned, Mr. Parker. So I want to learn that from you. And probably the best example he gave me, he says, look, Jesus, if you look at a leaf, a real simple leaf, and you look at it, you extend the arm and you look at the leaf, what do you see? You see the little veins of the leaf, right? And as you bring it in closer, or not, actually, you see it real simple. Now when you bring it in closer, then you see the little veins of the leaf, something that you couldn't see from this far away. Then if you put it under microscope, then you see greater depth, okay? The art is the same way. Unfortunately, a lot of people just look at the art from this far away, and they don't look at the details of it, okay?
Right.
So basically, that's what I've been trying to do over these years, is really understand the art, dissect the art, and see the details of it, okay?
Wow, that's something to say. You've been at Kenpo how many years now?
Well, I started in 1972, so
and now you're deciding that you're like, I think I'm really starting to get somewhere. You're starting to get into it.
53 years, so
that's amazing. That's so good.
Time, but Guru Tim, one of the things that I see is that even in yellow belt techniques, that I have some of my 9th-degree black belts, they still take private lessons with me. They still are learning things from even these techniques that they've already been doing for the last 45 years, because I'm beginning to analyze more things, in the Kenpo system,
Exactly.
Like one of the things that I 3-4 years ago, I noticed it was probably more. I noticed the first technique, we call that the lay sword, okay? And the way I see it, and the way it's called the lay sword, because the kick, the lays, the hand sword, but I see it more beyond that, I see is the first 2 letters is really Mr. Parker's name, his first name, in reverse, D-E, okay?
Oh. Okay.
So it's his name spelled E-D, but if you put it in reverse, it's D-E. Mm-hmm. And then the last 2 letters, the laid, is E-D. And he always believed on opposites and reverse, okay?
Uh-huh.
And so basically, in the same technique, in the very first technique in the Kenpo system, you basically have his name the opposite way, front and back, same word. And in reverse, the first 2 letters. And then the middle letters are L-A-Y. He lay out the system in which there's opposites and reverse. And the interesting thing with that, Guru Tim said, is even when Guru teaches us, those 8 drills, right? Opposites to that. This drill here is opposite to back and back and back in.
Right.
This drill to inward, or forward and back in is opposite to back and inward in. So the first 4 drills are opposite to the next 4. Even the sweeps that Guru teaches that, where you sweep with the right foot from the front, then you sweep with the left foot from the front, then you sweep from the right foot from the back, then you sweep with the left foot from the back. All those are opposites. It's just that people don't talk about it, because a lot of people, especially in the Kenpo system, they don't talk about it because they don't understand that, so.
Right.
So this is what makes it fascinating, and this is what I kind of look into the system in greater depth, So.
Yeah, I love it. Well, I love it that, someone that's got the seniority level that you do is saying that outwardly, because I think there's a stigma, may have always been there, but, a stigma now for sure on, once you obtain a certain level of not admitting that you don't know something or that you're still learning something. And, unfortunately, we have a really good example that we learn from all the time that's not like that. But, that's a difficult place to get, when you've got accolades and you've got experience and you've got recognition to go, well, I'm really kind of still learning this. That's a humility that's really unusual.
One of the things that prior, as I was working for my black belt, a couple of my instructors, what happened with them was they got to the point where they said, Jesus, I just want to tell you, I really don't know what else to go over with you. I went through this system with you, or at least what I know. So they put a stop to it.
And this concludes the abbreviated version of the podcast. Please consider supporting the program by going to www.patreon.com/MALMAG and subscribing to the show. You can also purchase this individual episode or any individual episode at our Gumroad page. That's malmag.gumroad.com. Thank you for listening to this episode with Jesus Flores. Coming up next week, I connect to the Bay Area on Zoom and I talk with Conrad Bowie. Our Malmag online store at martialartslifestylemagazine.com has a full selection of Timmy B's brand sticks for FMA and Krabiker Bong. Timmy B's brand now selling in Japan as well. Beautiful Timmy B's brand shirts and Dos Manos shirts are available. We also have sarongs, malongs, and wooden training knives. An online course in the Dos Manos method for FMA is available under the Courses tab. More courses coming soon. Check out the Places to Train tab to find schools near you, and click on the events calendar page to see what seminars and events are happening all around the world. And of course, visit our main page for articles on the martial arts. Music by Arthur J. Martial Arts Lifestyle Magazine and the Martial Arts Lifestyle Podcast are trademarked and copyrighted by TNT LLC.